It's not.
Yes.
It indicates
you don't want to be
that
disengaged. Yes.
It indicates that I am not
Fully present. Yes.
fully present.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're fully present.
Let me get my notebook out. Didn't you get your notebook down and writing? We're gonna do something really different today, Hannah. Not really different, but we're going to talk
And
about
all the people watching, Hannah.
I thought it would be interesting for us to consider generationally how we are different, which we often do here, but maybe some assumptions that are made about our generations. And so I asked Tess this morning to think about what are some things that she wishes my generation or other generations knew about her generation.
Okay, so did you catch that? She asked me this morning.
We,
This morning? I haven't been able to process this yet.
So then I realized that I really don't need time to think about things. Things just kind of flow. Like all of a sudden when we did the, we did a presentation at a school district to like 100 some school staff. And this story just came to me that happened over the weekend and I just shared it. And I wasn't planning on it.
Beautiful, and I had to stop myself from tearing up.
It's a great story.
I think you should share it. If you would like to, not to pressure you.
Okay.
But it'll also give me more time to think about it.
All right. Okay. So a couple Sundays ago, I got a voicemail from a lady from Walmart who said, I hope I'm finding the right Allison Horn because I've been looking for you for a while. I think you left some reels, projector reels, at the 180th and Center Walmart. They're labeled 1977, 1978, and I hope they're yours. So I thought to myself, absolutely, I remember doing that. It was, 2013, a while ago. I found a box of projector reel film and wanted to see if it could be transferred to DVD so that I could watch it. And took it in, left it there, said, let me know what you can do with this, and didn't hear back. I forgot about it, no one contacted me. Two things happened. One, my phone number got transposed incorrectly, so instead of 525 as the prefix, it was 323 as the prefix. I moved, and when I moved, the Windstream email account that I had went inactive. So that was the email address that they had. So anyway, I called back and I said, yes, this is Allison. I didn't get Patty, but I got someone else. And he said, okay, yeah, they're here. Stop in, 180th and Center. So I go in Monday evening and I said, hi, my name's Allison and I think you have some projector films of mine. And she was like, okay. And she opens up this drawer and she looks down in the drawer and then she looks up at me and she looks back to, and she looks again at me and she said, you're Allison, you're a real person. And I said, yes. And she said, I've been trying to get a hold of you since 2013. And I said, what? So she tells me all of this that I didn't realize. And then she turns to this guy who's working with her and he goes, do you know who this is? Do you know who this is? It's Allison Horn. And he goes, I mean, it was just like this. I've never felt more important in my life. And I said, yes. And he said, we have been trying to reach you. He said, we have a 90-day policy here. And so we ditch things after 90 days. You don't come to pick them up, they get thrown away. He said, Patty would not part with these films. And Patty said, I knew they were someone's memories. There's a little girl in here. I know that this might be her. I'm going to try to find her. And she kept reaching out. She said, you know how many different managers have come and gone in that time? She said, but I just kept saying, no, I'll find her. So she said, the other day I thought to myself, you know what? Why don't I just look her up? She said, you have a uniquely spelled name. So she Googled me and found my phone number and left the voicemail. And she said, I'm so glad you came in. I knew you were a real person. I knew you would come back. And I said, Patty, I want to tell you, here's the deal. My dad died when I was 5. He died in 1980. He was 34 and my mom was just 32. And my mom, in her grief, just could not, there was very little evidence of my dad in our home. I don't have very many pictures. I just don't have much of my dad. I said, Patty, you have no idea what this means to me. I said, these videos, this film is precious to me. I've never heard my dad's voice. I can't remember it anyway. After age 5, I said, this is truly a treasure to me. And she was crying, and I was crying, and the guy, I mean, this is at the Walmart photography, usually, and this time of year at Walmart, people, it is bad news. Like, no one's happy. Everyone's jammed packed in the school supplies line. Everybody's mad about going back to school and the things they have to get. And she's crying, I'm crying, and the guy's just like, he said, for every day you didn't show up, we are now going to hear this story every day to but she said, that's why I held on to them. I knew they were someone's memories, and she said, that's why I do what I do. And all I could think of is, for every job, as Jerlene says, for every job, there's someone who loves to do it. But I was thinking in that moment, I said, thank you so much for caring about me. I mean, to her, it could have been just a reel. And it was so much more than that. And so I just reached over the counter. I just reached over the counter and hugged her. And turned around and said, thank you. Have my DVD. So about 2 years ago, one of my dad's friends reached out to me and said, hey, I have some letters for you. Your dad and I were both in Vietnam, and we wrote back and forth to each other. He said, I don't know if you want these. And I'm like, yes, I want them. I'd never seen my dad's handwriting. So, I mean, these things that it takes so little sometimes to do such a big thing for someone else. And just the fact that somebody who didn't even know me cared about this little girl and these images and knew that it was someone's story and she just couldn't throw it away. I mean, it was huge. So off the cuff, I tell this story, not planned, at Plattsmouth. It just came to me, and I shared it. I looked over, and she was giving me this look like, what? And then I handed her the mic, and I was like, I mean, really, and I'm sorry, it's a pretty good story, and there were a lot of people.
It's a great story. They were like weeping, and then you had to back to me, and I'm like, like, thanks for letting us come today. Happy school year.
Things just come to me. I'm sorry, with my communication, you never know what's gonna go. And I was like,
okay, but that was like the first time, because you're always so predictable in your communication. You say like the same phrases in the same way, and you use the same stories. Like, I could share all the stories.
Look at me using some adaptability yesterday.
I was like, what is happening?
So today I come in and I said, hey, what do you think we talk about Jen Millie today? What would you prefer, or what would you like for people to know about your generation that you think maybe they don't? And she was like, I don't have time for about this.
I was like, I have 3 meetings before we're filming.
So we're going to just roll with it. We're going to
okay.
borrow one another's strengths, communication and adaptability blend, a little bit of individualization tossed in there.
Okay. So the first thing that came to me was, not all millennials are created equal.
Tell me more.
I feel like, from my experience and from what I have seen, people generalize my entire generation and can give definitive characteristics. Like, they are entitled, they, are highly educated, they are not patriots, toast. They eat avocado toast and don't buy houses and are making the diamond industry crash. Like, all these things that you read, and it is like, I don't feel like any of that applies to me. Like, it's like generations and millennials and groups of people, whatever it is, like, groups of people are sums of individuals. Like, millennials, the millennial population, and I didn't even look this up, I should have looked it up, how many millennials there are like in the United States or something. But the group of millennials it's just a compilation of a bunch of individuals that have this one similarity in common, this one commonality, their age. They're born within this span of years.
Right.
And yes, there may be some common trends and common threads, but those commonalities you see in every generation because of the circumstances that are around them. So you see certain generations, like we talk about people like baby boomers who were young or young adults at the time of the Great Depression, like there were things that generations go through or circumstances they had that force certain culture, certain things and attributes about them, and most that you'll find, but they're not all the same. They're not all, not every this doesn't apply to every millennial. When people say, you're entitled or you don't care about anything, you're so apathetic and you go from job to job to job, and but when you sit down and you talk with a millennial, you find that they're very passionate about things, or they don't all eat avocado toast, or
right.
They might like to buy a house one day. It's not these large generalizations, I feel like, that are just labels applied to someone that, when you walk into a room, like, oh, well, she's a millennial, she must not care about anything, or whatever it is that, yeah. I guess that's, like, the frustrating thing that I have, because I feel like so many of the characteristics of millennials don't apply to me. Because I am very, like, let's think about the past. Yeah, I am an old soul, but I'm 23. So I'm a millennial.
And ironically, you told me today that you didn't feel like I was actually completely unaware of these things because I have more millennial characteristics.
Yeah, I think you do. Yeah.
So
I don't know. So that was like the thing that came to me.
Okay, I would like to throw out some labels that I've heard besides avocado toast, which, if you're not familiar with avocado toast, don't be. That's my suggestion. I think it's gross. I don't put cucumbers on my waffles, so I don't know why you would put avocado on your toast.
They don't equal the same thing. Hannah and I are like, they're two totally
Why would
different
you put something that is intended to be guacamole on a breakfast item?
Okay, guacamole came out way, way later than the avocado. That has been around on
Why would you
earth
put something that
since
you're going to put on a salad or in a salad dressing on toast?
Because it's delicious.
Can I get name it?
Well, no. I'm going to stick to my jelly and jam, and
I think I've had it once.
Okay, so beside that label, I mean, and that's such a ridiculous label. That's not fair.
Okay, throw them at me.
All right, I'm gonna throw them at you. I'm
gonna
gonna
my shield up.
All right, you ready?
Okay.
You constantly need praise because you are from the participation ribbon generation. Everybody wins. What do you have to say about that?
If you look at the research, it's fairly accurate, but it's not you need praise. It's I want to get constant feedback because I want to grow and improve. And if you look at, like we talked a little bit about the changing workplace a couple episodes ago when we talked about the Clifton Strike Summit about about Jim Clifton and his keynote. And he talked a lot about this, and it's a lot because of millennial trends that the workplace is changing because millennials are being introduced into the workforce. But me as an individual, and I think a lot of people that I know, we're entering the workforce. This is the beginning of, depending on where like Medicare goes, like 40 to 60 years of our life in the workforce. And so I don't want to talk to you once a year about my performance. I want to have constant conversation. I want you to be, after one project, when it's fresh in my mind, saying, okay, like having a conversation, that went really well, or like, what is one thing we could do better, or you could do better, how is one way you could improve and grow from here? I like getting feedback and I like receiving praise, and I think that's definitely an individual thing because words of affirmation is one of my top 2 love languages. Mm-hmm. So I receive praise really well internally. I'm bad at kind of taking it, but I definitely am taking it.
You're very open to overall things. You don't want, this is my observation of you, which I think goes against the label. You don't want only praise. You want to grow.
Yep.
You want someone who's going to invest in your growth.
Yep.
So that constant feedback, as Sheryl Sandberg, I think, said at Global Leadership Summit,
Yep.
Find someone who's going to be honest with you.
Who's going to tell you the truth. Yep. And I think that, for me, it definitely is, I want to be praised and I want to be affirmed in what I'm doing well, because that's the strengths-based model.
Right.
It's growing what I do well, and sometimes I can't see that internally, but also is definitely feedback. Constructive criticism is huge, but to me, it's also about who it's coming from. if I can, I can walk into a certain environment and I can have a lot of people affirm me. Even like when we were at Plattsmouth in the community talking to the teachers, there were a lot of people who was like, oh, you did a great job, or oh, that was so insightful, or oh, and then you got that email. And she got an email from one of the people that was in the audience, and this woman had lost her father as well, really young. And she talked about how that story that just came to Allie was so impactful for understanding strengths and really helped her.
Mm-hmm.
It just really touched her. And so if I was in yours, even that, I mean, even though I didn't share that story, that praise meant so much more than the teachers that passed by and say, oh, that was really great. Or even if
Yes.
it was genuine in that moment, when I know that it's really touched someone and it's not just a pleasantry,
Right.
or when the work that I've done, especially for me, and I think because of my strengths, when I know the work that I've done has changed someone's mindset about something, has changed the way they view something, it's enlightened them, it's brought them to a new perspective, and they share that is so much more meaningful than, oh, good job, Tess, pat on the back.
Right.
You know.
And I think, who is it coming from? Some great learning that I had at a training session that was offered from Collective for Youth was about earning the right to be heard, earning the right for your opinion to count. So when you think about who's it coming from, who is worthy in your beliefs, in your mindset, in your career, in your world, who's worthy to give you feedback that you will see as something you can trust? Because all of us have opinions, but really earning the right to have an opinion that counts. And I think when you think about the role as a mentor, earning the right to be heard by your mentee takes a long, 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 long time.
That's great.
So that label participation ribbon was one that came to me. How about engagement? That millennials are disengaged or need stimulus all the time because they can't focus and they can't do just one thing at a time because you've grown up with having multiple, whether it's social media, TV, all those things at you. What are your thoughts on that assumption and label?
A couple things that I can't speak for all millennials, obviously, but a couple of things that I have experienced is I feel like because of the environment that I've grown up in, where there's all of this information overload, all of this input, is I have learned to sort through it really well. And I think because everything is at my fingertips, I think millennials are, like people in my generation, are incredibly resourceful because we know the outlets to look at. We didn't have to sift through an encyclopedia of the one word, and when it wasn't the right word, then we had to find the synonym, which was in a different letter, which was in a different encyclopedia book.
Thesaurus.
You know, yeah, it's it's a different. I grew up with everything just right here,
Right.
so I'm a highly efficient person, not because I have super high achiever or super high, focus or anything like that, but because I know where to look, I know the best place to look, and I know also because of my strengths what needs to get done. Like everything, it doesn't take me time to open my email and figure out how to format my Word document and all the shortcuts to Excel. Like I just know that because that was how I grew up. I don't need to think about scrolling all the way down to the bottom of my spreadsheet. I just know Control-Shift-Down arrow. That like language of technology that's kind of ingrained in me, there's a faster pace. So I feel like sometimes, at least for me, I feel like that could lead to disengagement if someone's not constantly feeding someone at that level, because I get done with things really quickly. So if I were in a job where, fortunately I'm not, but if I were in a job where all of what I did relied on someone giving me a task to do, and if they don't realize that I'm done, which I think is a lot of people my age, they're in entry-level positions, within, wherever it is. If I had someone, what I did was dependent on someone telling me what to do all the time, I would get done so quickly that if that person wasn't constantly attentive to the fact that I've finished, there will be all of this time where I'm not doing anything. And so I'm going to spend my time, catching up on Facebook or reading my emails or whatever it is because I don't have anything to do. Fortunately, I'm in a job where the work is endless, nonprofit, woohoo, and I can always find something to do. But I feel like there's that, a little bit of that. And then, but I also think the big thing is if there is not purpose and mission to what an individual is doing, there is no sense in doing it. And I think that's a huge thing that I think everyone in my generation needs. And you look at Gallup's research, you look at other research, people in my generation, and think about the fact that we are thousands of dollars in student loan debt.
Yes.
You know, we are not, you know, but they are like 3 or 4 times as likely to take a lower paying job if there's a higher mission and purpose in what they're
Right.
doing when they transition. You know, they're willing to take a pay cut for something that gives them more purpose in their life.
Do you think that comes from the student loan debt? Do you think that comes from things that you observed growing up? Do you think that that comes from things that were happening culturally, historically in our world, in our nation? Where do you think that comes from, that mission drive?
I think I can only speak to myself, but I think for me, one of the things that it might come from is what we've seen in our parents. And my parents have worked in the same companies, the same jobs, doing the same thing for decades. And they come home and it's like, okay, now my life begins at 5 o'clock after the clock has run out. Like I live for the end of the day, or I live for the weekends instead of,
Right.
you know, instead of driving and giving life towards Monday, you know, living for the weekends instead of living for the week, you know, living from the week. And so I think that work consumes so much of your life. I think a lot of us, and I have seen my parents waste a lot of their lives in something that they don't love to do just to get a paycheck, because financial sustainability and providing for my family is the ultimate value. But that's not a value for people my generation. I mean, yes, I want to be financially sound, but buying a 4-bedroom house at the expense of losing all of my time in my life to sitting at a desk in a job I don't like versus living in a 1-bedroom apartment for my whole life with purpose,
Right.
with meaning to what I do, like, there's no question about that, you know? And I have like less space tickets soon and stuff to collect, you know?
Well, and I
So-
think some of that for your parents comes from their parents, and it
Mhm.
comes from, you know, how it transitioned. So I often think about, okay, you are literally 2 years older than my daughter, and when I look at, as a mom, what my kids have seen from us as parents, directly and indirectly,
Mhm.
intentionally and unintentionally. And Lauren is pursuing a path in social work, and I'm like, wouldn't you like to do something that maybe makes some money? And she's like, you're the worst example. You love what you do, and you have always said, love what you do, or why are you doing it? And I think for me, I was right at that. I mean, I graduated from college in the late 90s, where I had people in my classroom sitting with me saying, hey, there's more to this. It's bigger than this. It's bigger than a paycheck. It was just kind of starting
Yeah.
at that time frame. And lucky for me, I happened to be right in the middle of it at a liberal arts college. And shout out to Doan, I wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for all of those professors, all of those classes, all of that engagement around dialogue that I was not used to.
Mm.
And I think one of the reasons I wanted to do this today is I believe that if we are going to see any kind of change from where we are today as a nation, as a culture, as a world, we have to come to the table to say, I want to hear where you're coming from, and I want to see things differently. The millennial perspective that you bring has helped me better understand what 23 is like today. Now, circumstances were different. I mean, I had my daughter 2 years prior to, where you are right now. Yes. And had my son 2 years later. And, I was done having kids, and that was my family. So when I think about that and where I was, the assumption that I feel is often made about my generation. And I was thinking about this when you mentioned this about your parents. I thought I knew everything at 20. I really did. And now that I'm 40-ish, it is incredible to me to look back and say, I really And I do that, but I do that every year. Oh, wow, the things I thought I knew last year. I don't think I had a sense of that until I got into this kind of generation where I'm at, or this stage of life that I'm at now. However, what I think is an assumption about my generation, because I'm 40-ish, I'm not retirement age, I'm not super experienced, I'm not uber wealthy and established, but I have learned some things that only time and experience can teach you. And so when you talk about the entitlement piece, I think that's where there's a divide.
Yeah.
There's an unwillingness for me to see your perspective because I think you don't have the time and experience yet. And maybe from the millennial perspective, there's not an understanding quite yet that time and experience brings those things. But when I think about the ways that we bridge together and the ways that we work together, it's because of those unique perspectives that make us a great team. So, I mean, for me to hand the microphone off, I mean, seriously, and all these people were like, Tess, awesome, that was great. I mean, because they loved the way that you presented the information. You were not scattered. I was like, and just sharing here, thorough, professor, thoughtful, articulate, make sentences that have a beginning and an end, and they make sense. I'm learning that sometimes I stop mid-sentence.
Yeah, you do.
And then I'm hoping you know what I mean. Like,
Yep.
just like that. So what I think would be great for our viewers to do is to consider someone who might be different from them, whether it's generationally, whatever it is, and ask them, what is an assumption? Or what is a label, or what is something you would like for me to know that you don't think I get about you? And I think that'd be a great way to change some conversations this week. So I think we'll keep this short this week and wrap it up with that. That's going to be our challenge to you.
I want to add another challenge too.
Okay.
Because, and it goes just along the line of that, but I read recently an article, and it was an article with screenshots of all the article titles about millennials. I'll have to send it to you, or send you a link to send out.
Yeah, we'll
to
send it
everybody.
out. Yeah.
But I think along the lines of having those conversations is not just asking that question, like what is an assumption, is when you see things in the media, when you see things in articles, or you hear these quip phrases or one-liners about a generation, not just millennials, but other generations as well. There's all this stuff now about, the Gen Xers or the baby boomers, to not take it as absolute truth. And I think that's a reminder we need about the media, because media has an agenda. They have a certain perspective that they're trying to come across to translate their message well. And that's the point, and you need people to communicate like that. But that can sometimes mean that there are these one phrases or one sentences or titles of articles that if you just read that and don't get into that, or just read that and read the information and say, okay, well, all millennials don't want to buy houses, or all millennials love avocado toast. If you read that and don't actually have a conversation about it, it becomes truth in your head, and you start to look at things from a macro level, even if you don't intend to, even if it's not just about that one thing. When you see something else, like, oh, all millennials must be that way. Ask your mentee, or ask someone that's from a different generation what they think about that, what they think if they've ever tried avocado toast, if they, things like that. Just being able to open the dialogue to more, and then that will also bring out assumptions that you've had.
And I mean, is it amazing that in 2017 we're still talking about how ridiculous stereotypes are?
I think it's ridiculous that we're talking about that, yeah.
Yes, because, I mean, what you just described is stereotyping somebody.
It's labeling, it's
Yes.
grouping.
So I think what I have found as our Total Jen and Millie year-long theme is stop the labels. We just, labels.
You love to do that.
No to labels. But we have to talk through it.
Yep.
In order to better understand that. So that was the intention of today. We'll send, we won't have much for a link except for one thing. Tess has something called a what's that heater upper thing in there?
Oh my gosh, it's called an electric water kettle.
A water kettle.
Water
And
kettle.
I had in college what I thought was called a hot pot. I'm going to look it up to find out what it was. That's what we used to make ramen noodles. I am certain it was made by the crock pot people. And it was the hot, everybody got one at graduation. And they were green and white. And I had one, and it's just basically the same thing. So, those of you who are my age and older, you know what I'm talking about. Today I had to ask for help on how to run her water kettle. Learning all the time. The other thing too, Hannah, can we do a shot of like us in the kayak?
Oh my god.
I
We
can
have
take a
kayak-
picture.
We have an awesome kayak in our, I mean, this is such a great space.
Yeah.
And I
It
can't
is.
imagine, I mean, we could maybe do Jen and Millie on location someday, but you just, like today there's a kayak, because it's almost time for gala. There's a kayak in our office. And what's really cool about that is it makes me feel like I'm on my way to the lake.
Yeah.
And a reminder, I thought it was brought in for growth mindset reminder, the power of it.
Yeah, because we would
Do that for me.
get a kayak for you to help you.
I'm not
remind you to get
kayaking
growth
yet,
mindset.
but I will be.
I'm not good at kayaking yet, but there's one in the office and I'm going to practice.
So there
I'm
was
just
a whole
kidding.
philosophy behind the kayak, though, right? Oh, Allie got a new computer. That's what it was.
Yes.
So Allie got a new computer because our computer, she was still working from Windows Office 7 Pro. So like
I don't know what that means.
2006 software or something ridiculous like that.
I was in high school when that was big.
Yeah, yeah. It was. So this is a pretty outdated software, and so one of our colleagues, Brandon, just left to go to law school, which I'm sure most of you know Brandon. But one of the things he wanted to do, in order to get everyone set up when he left, was make sure everyone is on the same platform, Windows 10. Pretty simple, pretty easy. And so in order to do so, though, Allie needed a new computer because her old computer didn't have high enough capability to be able to platform with Windows 10. So she had to get a new computer.
I really miss it. Okay, first of all, the computer screen is much smaller, so I'm like this all the time. And it's hard for me to use it, but I have pushed myself for the change. And instead of falling back, like for my first training without it, I wanted to just take my own computer. I'm like, no, I can't. And I thought,
Oh, you can.
you must try, as Yoda says.
So that's the philosophy of the kayak, which is why she wanted to take a picture of it. That the first
Yeah.
time you got in a kayak
I felt uncomfortable.
and it was not successful.
And now I'm using a new computer that's Windows 10 or whatever, and it still feels uncomfortable. That's the end of the story. Anyway, we'll see you next time. But thank you for listening and for giving us feedback. We're going to challenge you to think about finding someone that you might be different from and asking them, what would you like to know? What would you like to know about me that you think maybe is an assumption about whether it's generation, your role, that kind of thing, would be something that you would like to know. And I think it would be a great way to expand some conversations. You can also do a lot of strength spotting in that too. Have a great week.
Bye.